Hey fellas, welcome back. Okay, so in this morning's training session, what I wanted to discuss a little bit about is patterns and and pattern hunting, and just maybe a little bit of an introduction to the subject. Uh, and that I consider myself to be a price action trader, and price action has many definitions, or a lot of people have tried to define it, uh, and sometimes when people are talking about price action, they're talking about uh, a single candle, right? So they might be talking about a pin bar. Sometimes when we're talking about price action, we're talking about a couple of candles. So we're looking at something like a bull bear hammer. We could be looking at an inside bar, or any number of different constructs. But the real issue of being a price action trader is that we're looking for something familiar on screen. We're looking for a pattern of behavior, right? And we're looking for a construct that we can recognize, something that we can interpret, and something that we can give meaning to. Well, at the end of the day, price action is and all of that and every single candle, all of that construct that we see on the screen is just a construct of buyer and seller behavior. And so what happens is when I'm looking at a screen, I'm asking a question, does it mean something, right? And I'm looking at the way that the price is forming. I'm looking at that price behavior. I'm looking at that price action. And like I said, sometimes it may be looking at a single candle. Sometimes it may be looking at a handful of candles. Sometimes it's looking at the proximity of price to a line or a level. But the question I'm asking is, does it mean something? And this issue, or this question of does it mean something, right? If we're kind of expanding that idea out of what should it mean, right? We have to be able to make some form of interpretation and say it means something about the future price behavior. Because if the current price action is telling us about something which has happened on the left-hand side, and you hear sometimes people say, the left-hand side is history and the right-hand side is a mystery, right? What we're trying to do is we're trying to take the mystery out of the right-hand side. We're looking at the left-hand side and we're saying, okay, I've seen a particular price formation. I've seen a certain price behavior inside of those candles, inside one candle, inside two candle, maybe inside the construct of the whole screen, right? But from that, I'm able to determine what the future price behavior is going to be. And because I'm able to determine what the future price behavior is going to be, then that is something which is going to give me confidence in order to be able to place some trades and have positive expectation about where that price is going to head in the future. All right, so essentially, as a pattern hunter, we're looking for meaning on the screen, and we're trying to take the mystery out of what's going to happen on the right-hand side by looking at the left-hand side. A lot of the techniques that we've discussed, they've been very simple techniques, and we've been looking so far at lines, at levels. We've been looking so far at constructs which are made up of one or two candles, and today what I want to do. In fact, we've even looked at price attraction points, but we've introduced the subject, and in price attraction points, we looked at one of the easiest identifiable structures that we could use and say, okay, perhaps this area becomes a target. But what I want to do today is to widen the scope of that discussion a little bit, and to look at patterns which extend beyond the one or two candle. Right? We're going to look at patterns which involve three candles, and then we're going to look at patterns which possibly involve the whole of the screen. And the question that we're asking is, does it mean something? And what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to open up this discussion by looking at a construct which has been attracting my attention recently, and I've been asking that same question about it. It's something which I've put into my potential pattern book, right? So I keep a couple of folders, and there's a folder which I call chart patterns, and inside of that folder I record any repeating construct which I see, right? And once I've seen that happen 4, 5, 6 times, and afterwards the price behavior was the same after seeing that particular formation, it ends up in my pattern book. Sometimes I see a construct taking place on screen, it catches my attention, and I say, okay, that's interesting. You know, I'm able to spot this formation. Does it mean something? And it ends up in my possible patterns folder. And if I see it again, it goes in the possible pattern folder again. And then if I see it 4 or 5 times and the net result is the same, then after that it ends up as being a qualified pattern, because I say, okay, I've seen this now too many times to be able to ignore it. Therefore, the next time I see this particular occurrence, it's actually a chart pattern, and I'm going to look to try and benefit from that, and I'm going to try and take a trade off of it, right? So first of all, I'm going to introduce to you something which I'm looking at the moment. I don't know whether it's actually a chart pattern or not, right? But it seems to be an interesting construct on interesting construct on the screen, and what I'd recommend is that we all look out for it together. And you know, if you see this particular candle formation taking place, then send me alerts, send me a screen capture of it, because that's what I'm collecting at the moment, and I need before pictures and after pictures, right? But here we go. Here's one of the first times that it kind of attracted my attention. I'm looking at cable, and we're going to come back and we're going to see quite a few patterns on cable this morning. But we're going to go all the way back to where are we going back to? We're going back to April, okay? And the pattern which attracted my attention on cable back in April was this construct here. All right, so this is the structure which I'm looking at, which is that we had a full-bodied candle with a wick, and if we look at the second candle and the third candle, we get the only way I've been able to describe it is I'm calling it a wick fill, right? It may not necessarily be the best possible description. It may not possibly be the best description, but I'm calling it a wick fill. So you get a strong bullish candle, and after getting that strong bullish candle, it's got a bit of a wick there. I'm sure in the Japanese candlestick terminology, this particular candle probably has a name. I don't know what it is. It doesn't really bother me. What I'm looking at are the 2 candles which follow it, and we're seeing that wick getting filled. And what we saw happen after this is really interesting, right? So we're looking at the price breaking higher, and after the price has broken higher, the price broke down, right? And in fact, if I zoom out a little bit, you'll see how far down the price broke, and that had me wondering, if I'm seeing this particular construct on screen, if I'm seeing that bullish candle, then I'm getting a wick fill, and you get a little bit of follow through after that. So maybe the first trade after you see those 3 candles is that you're going to get a follow through trade. But once that follow through has taken place, maybe you ought to start looking in the other direction, and maybe you ought to start looking for a short trade, and if the price has made its way through that level, then maybe that drop is something which is going to be quite significant, right? So can I use that structure in order to establish bias and to say, all right, as long as the price is above here, I'll look for technical long positions, and if the price is falling below there, I'll start looking for technical short positions, right? So this is the first occurrence I saw of this, and when I saw that, I thought, okay, this is an easily identifiable, it's something which is easily identifiable, and because it's so easily identifiable, then I'll look out for it in the future, and I'm going to see if if it behaves the same every single time, or if it behaves the same 9 times out of 10, and 1 time it doesn't. I'll say, okay, maybe that's a nuance, because could I have spotted that? And that's what I'm trying to recognize. That does it mean something? Is it telling me something about the future which is going to take place on the right-hand side and take the mystery out of the right-hand side? I saw this construct again on gold, and now we're looking back just to the beginning of the month. So if I capture the screen, here it is again. All right, we've got 3 candles. We've got that bullish candle with the wick, and then if we're looking at the next couple of candles, they're going and filling that wick. The price ends up breaking higher, so you're getting that follow-through trade, and then the price ends up breaking down. Right, so once we've had the follow-through trade, I can start looking for a short, and I can start looking for a reason to be shorting it. So this is the second time that particular formation ended up in my possible pattern books, right? So pattern hunting, looking for something that takes the mystery out of the right-hand side, looking for price behavior on the left-hand side. It's a construct of buyer and seller behavior, and perhaps it is indicating to us something which is going to happen in the future, right? Now, this is the freaky element of being a pattern hunter, right? That you got to keep on looking. You find that sometimes these patterns change, sometimes these patterns evolve, right? And you can find, and this is something which I've seen over the course of the last few years. I've been hunting patterns now for 5-6 years, and sometimes you find that it changes, right? So at the moment we're seeing this particular construct. It gives a little bit of a follow through, and then it starts giving a reversal. It may happen in 2 or 3 years time. We're looking at this same construct, and we find it gives an immediate reversal after forming, or we may find that it gives bullish continuation and it just keeps on going forever and ever and ever, right? But if you keep your eye on the construct for the time being, what we're finding is you get a follow through and then it's falling back. I've seen 2 particular occurrences of it. I need to see 2 or 3 more, and that will really confirm in my mind that the structure has meaning. And then I'll start looking and saying, okay, you know what? I can see this. I'm seeing this pattern repeat. I'm seeing this behavior repeat, and now I want to start benefiting from it. There's no point. It's no point spotting a pattern if you're not going to earn from it. It's no point spotting a pattern if it's not going to give you pips, right? So we move on from that, and we're saying, okay, here's something that I've spotted, but now I want to start earning from it and do what a trader does, right? Which is to use that to my benefit and to grow my equity and to be growing my account. Otherwise, that whole exercise about spotting patterns is going to be pretty meaningless for me, and it won't mean and really it won't mean a thing. Okay, so so here's one particular example. I want to give you an example of something which I recorded a very, very long time ago, right? It was recorded such a long time ago. The image is actually captured on Owanda's web web app. It's not even captured on MetaTrader. I'll show you a little bit more of it's a little bit more of a complex structure. This is something which was recorded. Gosh, it's literally, it's going back years and years, and I would think it's probably going back to possibly 2008, 2009. But one of the structures which I recorded at that time on cable, and this was something which was occurring a lot, and it gave so many opportunities to trade. It was unbelievable. It was literally. We had at that time cable. We had that time cable in some form of a channel, and she was locked in. She was locked in consolidation. for a period of a few days, I believe. And one of the things which I noticed was that you'd get a couple of wedges. You'd get a smaller wedge, and then you'd get a larger wedge. And if you had the smaller wedge and the larger wedge, then the price would break north quite hard, right? And so here it is on the left-hand side, and she pushed north as a result of it. And here it is again on the right-hand side, and the wedge was just breaking, and it gave another opportunity for a push north. And literally, this is one pattern which I was able to trade at that time. Possibly, I think we took the best part of 6 or 7 trades off of that particular construct, right? During the course of a few days, right? So it wasn't. This wasn't something which lasted over days and weeks and months. But and it's something which I've not seen very often since, right? Or maybe I might have even stopped looking for it because it is so complex. But it's not something which I've seen since, and I don't recall trading it since. But I've kept it in my pattern book. So it was something which worked at a particular moment in time. It was a short-term. It was a short-term structure. Here you can see I've recorded it on a 15-minute chart. And but it repeated, and the result was the same every single time, right? So because the result was the same every single time, we're able to capture that and say, okay, let's start benefiting from it, and that's what we did, literally making tons and tons of trades and hundreds of pips out of this one particular construct. So so that's the reason why you have to kind of keep your eyes open and start looking for those meanings. Some interesting patterns which have caught my attention recently, and you'll see I've been posting a lot of analogies to the watch list also, to say, well, you know, if this is something which has happened before, then maybe this is something which can happen again. And I'm going to come back to GBP USD, and I want to take a look at how the wave ended in GBP USD, because I found this really interesting, and here again it's something which is looking at a whole sequence of candles. It's looking at what happened at the end of the wave and saying, okay, you know, this structure that we're seeing at the end of the wave on cable here on the left hand side, is this something which is common, right? Is it very common? Does it signal and is it a common signal that we've got a wave coming to an end? All right, and that's what I'm wanting to find out. Right. So there are a couple of and when I do this, usually what I do is I try to pick out some identifiers. I say, okay, what are my markers? And then what I'm trying to do is to translate those markers and say, okay, I'm seeing a similar construct, I'm seeing a similar price behavior on another chart, on another instrument, and can I pick out, or can I identify those same markers on the next chart? If I can pick out and if I can identify the same markers on the next chart, then I will look, or I will have a similar expectation. I would say, okay, here I'm picking out a few markers. The first marker which I'm picking out is the sharp fall here, right? That's my first marker which I'm picking out, and I'm picking that out because I'm thinking, you know what, there was a lot of selling going on here, and those sellers seem to have been wrong-footed. But you know, did they know something that we don't know? Right? Is that an early indication that the momentum is going to follow through in that particular direction? Right? That's the thinking that I'm having when I'm seeing that sharp fall. So the price breaks higher, and then the next marker which I'm able to identify is what's going on over here. Right? And I'm going to try and explain to you what I'm seeing here. Sometimes it's hard to give a very good description to price movement. I don't think there are enough verbs and adjectives and sometimes to describe this kind of stuff, but I'll try and do it in my kind of layman's terms. But I'm seeing a couple of hooking structures, and after the third hooking structure, I'm looking at this, right? And that's quite a lazy rise, right? It seems to be something which is happening without any volume, right? It's just it's a little bit of a helium-filled balloon, but it's got a hole in it, and so it's trying to rise. And then after that, once it's kind of done that lazy rise, it just tanks, right? That's the construct which I'm seeing. And I'm thinking, you know what, is this an end of wave structure, right? Because if it's the end of wave structure, and we saw over here on cable, we've had a lot of follow through on that. In fact, you know, we kind of had a heck of a lot of follow through on that. And if I see this again, then I ought to try and benefit from that, and I ought to try and then I ought to try and earn a little something from that, right? So so I was looking at dollar Swissy, and again, this is something which has been posted. This is something which has been posted in the watch list, all right? But here's what I'm looking at, right? Here's what I'm looking at, and we'll see if we can kind of identify this structure, right? So here's our bottoming structure here, which is making support, and then the price rises higher, and then we've got that kind of hooking thing going on, right? You got the hooking thing going on there, and then you have that little bit of a rise, and then the price collapses, right? So when I saw that happen on cable, right, my immediate, you know, when I saw it happen on cable, what I'm seeing on the right-hand side is that when the price fell, you know, she didn't actually stop; she kept on going, right? And the wave reversal that we got after seeing that construct was something which is very, very significant on cable. If we're looking here at what's happening on dollar Swiss, the price is falling, pulling back, falling, pulling back. She's actually pulled back into that support area. In fact, she even broke below it, right? And you're seeing quite a sharp fall there. She's pulled back and she's falling back again, right? And so I'm thinking, look, you know, is this price structure something I can identify with something which I've seen happen before? So flicking back over to cable, right? And if we look at this fall and we mark off the area where support was found, right? Again, just look at the kind of construct, right? That, you know what, when she started falling, you know, you had that period for about the course of a week or so, where you had that period for about the course of a week or so, where price was just kind of toing and froing. She was zigzagging, right? But she wasn't taking out the high, right? That's something which is quite apparent, right? And you had a whole bunch of lower highs formed. As far as having a support resistance flip is concerned, you may well consider that there was a support resistance flip going on around that kind of price area, right? But she wasn't taking out the high. So again, when I'm looking at the dollar Swiss and I'm seeing that kind of price action, I'm seeing that kind of price behavior, I'm thinking, you know what, this is just getting too interesting, right? This is getting really, really interesting. Cable did this for a long time. She did it for the course of, she did it for about the course of a week, maybe 2 weeks even. I haven't really measured it, but starting on the 1st of May, and in fact, it wasn't until the 14th, 15th of May until she tanked. So, so 2 full trading weeks. If we're looking at the dollar Swiss, this is something which started on around about the 1st of June, right? And today is the 11th, right? So, is this going to do the same thing, right? And so you can see in terms of the analysis which I've been giving on the dollar Swiss. And in fact, if you go back, I actually started talking about a reversal on dollar Swiss, and and talking about a significant level when the price was here somewhere, right back in the tail end of May, and I had another reason for that, which in fact we will discuss today as well, and I'll discuss that with you. But it does look as though all the markers are there, right? And not just the early markers here on the left-hand side, but all of the markers on the right-hand side too, right? So if we look at the way that she's behaving afterwards, making lower lows, and then after making those lower lows, she's going and making lower highs. She's not been able to take out that kind of 97 area, and that's why that 97 area is so critical. As long as the price is below that 97, as long as she's able to remain below it, then we can easily translate what's happening on dollar Swiss with what happened on cable. But if she's breaking above the 97, because every time you have a picture, there's an alternative picture, right? It's possible that it is possible to be looking at this same chart and say, you know what, that this bullish run has been so strong. Actually, Will, what you ought to be doing is to be looking at a rounding structure and say that she's going to round from here, and then she's going to go and break higher or something like that, right? So there's always an alternative picture, but for the time being, what has my attention is that on cable, we had this structure, and it seemed to be a structure that represented the end of wave. And so now on dollar Swissy, I'm thinking, well, if this is the end of wave, let me take my chances, right? And if it ends up costing me, it'll end up costing me. If it doesn't cost me, then she has a significant way to run, right? And when I'm looking at the H4 chart, in fact, forget the H4 chart. If I'm looking at the daily chart, and I'm saying, where has support been established on the daily? Support on the daily is coming in around the 86 area, right? Sounds really crazy, right? It's more than 1,000 pips away from where the price is now, all right? But, I have this habit, when I'm in a trade, I tend to be over-ambitious. It doesn't always work in my favor being over-ambitious, but when it does, it can mean 1,000 pips, right? So I'm kind of looking at that 86 area, and I'm thinking, there's a little bit of a hooking structure here. The price broke higher, pulled back, hooked again, and does it mean something? Well, I certainly hope. I certainly hope that it does, right? And so if I'm looking at the downside, we could be looking a long way down on this dollar Swiss, right? But all of that just by looking at GBP USD and saying, you know what, there's a similar structure. I'm going to show you something interesting now. All right, so here's a 5-minute time frame, right? And if we're looking at the 5-minute time frame, again, just tell me if this is something that you're able to recognize, right? That we had a little bit of a support structure which is established here. So this is coming around the 95.50 area, and we have a little bit of a support structure which is established here, and after that support structure is established, the price started breaking higher. Then she started doing that little kind of hooking thing, right? And then after that, she did that helium-filled balloon thing, right, with a hole in it. She just seemed to rise without any reason. This is yesterday in terms of technical entry. The level that we started monitoring this at was here, right? So ordinarily expectation would have been, we've had a strike price. There's the high on the strike price, and would be looking for that strike price to hold, right? Would be looking for the price to hold around then, and actually for the price to turn from there. Instead, what we saw, she went into like a 20 pip consolidation, right? And then she started doing that weird kind of thing, she's rising without any reason. And you can see there's no momentum in that. I stayed up half the night I stayed up half the night, um, just kind of watching this. Right, I was up until about 3 a.m. and and it's rather unfortunate uh, uh, that what okay, so it's rather unfortunate because I really didn't have to, right? But I'm just an addict, I suppose, right? But I was watching her on that M1, right? And my positions were in. I'm thinking, she's rising without any reason here, right? And it was very low liquidity at that time. This was all kind of happening leading up to the Tokyo Open, right? So leading up to about 1 a.m. here in the UK, and then the price started falling off, and I started breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief and said, okay, the way that this is falling is something I recognize, and I think I can go and get a couple of hours of shut-eye. But if we're looking at the construct here, again, we're seeing that similar kind of end of wave structure, right? So we've seen this on the pound. We're looking at an hourly time frame on the pound. We could even be looking at a 4-hour time frame on the pound, and we're seeing that construct. Here we're seeing it on a 5-minute chart, right? And this is the kind of thing, when you're pattern hunting, this is the kind of thing which excites your mind and says, okay, I'm seeing something familiar, right? And I'm seeing something familiar here. And then you can look to kind of start saying, okay, maybe I can benefit from this and take some trades, looking for a similar outcome to the one that I've seen before. Right? So very interesting end of wave structure. Just something that we've started or something I've started identifying recently. Like I said, it caught my attention on cable, and now it's catching my attention on Swissy. Does it mean something? Does it mean nothing? That's something which we're still yet to discover, right? It's still something that we've got to find out yet. But the similarities, well, the similarities are too many, right? And that's one of the things that makes it so exciting and makes it so interesting. Okay, I want to look at one more structure this morning and draw some comparisons, right? And this is a structure which I'm going to show you on. I'm going to show you it here on Euro GBP, right? And once we've seen it on Euro GBP, it may give us a little bit of insight about expectations to have on Euro USD. So on Euro GBP, and again, this is something which tends to repeat. It's something which you see a lot on smaller time frames, right? And it's something that I've traded a lot. It's something that I've traded a lot on smaller time frames, and I'm going to point it here on Euro GBP. On Euro GBP, this is something which I see on a 5-minute time frame, right? And once I'm seeing it on a 5-minute time frame, it gives me an idea about positive expectation for possibly 2 or 3 different trades, right? And here we are, and then there we were back in December, and then January, February, at the beginning of this year, and I saw that same construct on Euro GBP, and again, it gave me ideas for several trades, and I traded 3 waves on this, right? And with multiple trades on the Euro GBP. But if we're looking at the construct, I'm going to draw it for you, and then I'm going to show you what it is on the screen. What it looks like is that you have a strong momentum fall, you have a pullback, and the price starts making support just above the last support area, right? This is what it looks like. Eventually what happens is the price ends up breaking through that, right? And once you see that happen, as far as price expectation is concerned, you have two immediate expectations, in fact possibly three, right? And they're quite easy to measure, right? Your first expectation is that the price will pull back, it'll come back, and that support area there will turn resistance. Once that's happened, you're looking at making a lower low. And after 2 or 3 consolidations making lower lows, the price is going to break back north and head back and retest this particular area. All right. This is the expectation in terms of price movement. As you can see, it's not something which is just looking to benefit from one particular wave. Rather, it will give the opportunity to catch 2, 3, maybe even 4 different waves. All right. In fact, I can tell you what happens next from here is that she's going to push higher, and then she'll start pushing back down again, right? And she will go and retest the lows which I established where she starts rallying from, right? So it's a price construct. When you see this price construct, it gives you an idea of 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 waves which are going to follow, right? And then it comes down to you as a trader to say, you know what, I want to benefit from this particular price action. I want to benefit from this particular construct because I think this is something which I'm recognizing. It's something which I've seen happen before, and therefore the best guesstimation that I have is that this is something which can happen again. All right. So here, looking at Euro GBP, this is a construct which formed back in December of last year, and we saw the price falling, and after the price fell, she started consolidating here, making support. And in fact, it's quite interesting here because what you can do is if you go back to December's, if you go back to the archives and you're looking in December at Euro GBP while we're in this consolidation, every expectation was that the price would fall further, and we were selling in December and exited that trade around about here for a whole bunch of pips. And then the moment we came back in January, around the 6th of January, the first call which we were making was for Euro GBP, and for it to go and retest that 85 price area, which was the previous support, which we looked to turn resistance. Once it had retested the 85 price area, didn't get a trade in exactly at the 85, but once we had the indication that she was falling again, we were selling Euro GBP again, and only started exiting those Euro GBP trades around this kind of 81 price area, right? So looking for her to fall. In fact, based on the model which I've drawn here, I'm still looking for her to fall a whole lot further, right? And usually what happens is in this particular wave, you get 2 or 3 areas of consolidation that the price ends up breaking down from. And just one of my concerns was that was whether I should be counting this area here or this area here as a consolidation. I'm not entirely sure about that right now, whether those should be counted as consolidation areas. This area that we're seeing here certainly is consolidation, right? And I'm still thinking that maybe she's going to break down and she's going to break through that 80 and into the 78, 77 area, maybe even pushing as far as 76, and then we can look for a bullish reversal, pulling all the way back to 85, right? So really sticking my neck out here on an analogy, right? If she starts making a move from here and heading towards that 85 area, she'll break through the 85, and that's on the back of these consolidation structures being identified here, right? But this is where judgment comes into it. and you have to have a little bit of measurement, right? So, but in terms of the element which is easily identifiable and easily tradable, you'd be looking at this construct here in the first instance. Once you've identified that construct, then it's possible that you can have another 2 trades following it, right? So to chase the price north and then looking to chase the price south again. I just want to drop down a time frame. I'm looking at this on quite a wide time frame, but if I drop down a time frame and pull back, you'll see exactly what we're looking at here, and it makes that feature more identifiable, right? So you have that price drop, and then you've got this thing going on where a support is being established, right? The price ends up breaking through. You're getting that retest, and then she falls down again. All right. Now, I was looking at Euro USD, and I've been staring at Euro USD for longer than I care to remember. But you know, it kind of has me thinking, right? That are we seeing the same thing here on Euro USD? And I'm just going to remove these lines. Just going to remove these lines. Are we seeing the same thing here on Euro USD? Right. So is it that the price fell, and I'm going to tell you why this is one of the reasons this is really scary, right? Is that this is possibly the widest time frame I've ever seen this construct on. All right, it's just the widest time frame I've ever seen this construct on, and it's one of the reasons it scares me, right? That we're looking at the price falling, pulling back and establishing that kind of support structure here at the 130 area. All right, she's doing that at the 130 area. Where's the price now? At 25. Right, so what are we talking about? What we're talking about is a consolidation here. Right, and every time she'll pull back, she'll find some kind of support above the last high, rather, sorry, excuse my French, above the last low, right? And then a push back to the 30 area. And once she reaches that area, then you're going to be looking for the price to tank, right? And to go and hit fresh lows, and she'll be doing that and consolidating and breaking, consolidating and breaking, consolidating and breaking. But is Euro USD something which is going to mirror what we're seeing happen on something which we saw happen on the Euro GBP, right? So on the Euro GBP, I wouldn't identify it as a structure on the daily, right? But I would identify it as a structure on the 4-hour time frame. Well, I'm looking at it on the daily here. It's just easier. It's just, all right, let me put a box around it, and then this. Here we go, right? So on the Euro GBP, it's a structure that I would identify on a 4-hour time frame, right? And on the Euro USD, I'm looking at it on a daily time frame, right? That's why I'm kind of saying it's scary, right? One of the other things which I tend to note is, you know how we place our markers and we say, okay, everything's happening in the same way, all right? And what I'm trying to decipher with this particular construct on Euro USD is that, you know, is it really time for her to turn here, right? And looking at Euro GBP, one of the things that you'll note is you know, how that reversal took place, right? And you can see that range for a long period of time. You know, she stayed in that 82, above the 82 area, between 82 and 82.50, and she ranged there for what seemed like forever, right? She was there for the best part of a month before she actually broke north in order to go and retest that area. All right, so if you're looking at Euro GBP, if we're thinking that this wave is complete by way of analogy, so So you had that breakdown. If we're thinking that that breakdown is complete, before she goes for a retest, you're going to see a consolidation for a long period of time before she actually goes and does that retest. And that would be one of the markers that I'd be looking for, and I'd be trying to identify that on the Euro USD. If you see that consolidation for a long period of time, it will kind of make it easier and say, yep, this seems to be the level from which she's going to turn, and she's going to go and retest that 30 area, and she's going to drop down from there. All right. I just want to point out, this is not a trade recommendation. It's a pattern, right? And what we're trying to say is that we're seeing this particular construct. We've seen it take place on Euro GBP. It's something that I've seen on smaller time frames too, and it's something which is very, very easy to trade on the smaller time frames. The reason it's so easy to trade on the smaller time frames is because everything seems to happen on the same day, right? So if you're seeing that on an M5, right, you'll have the price breakdown, and then you'll have the price retest, and then you'll have the price breakdown again, and you'll catch those three waves all in the course of the space of a few hours, right? Maybe 2 or 3 hours, and job done. But we're seeing this on a much wider time frame. This is something that could take the course of days, weeks, even months to play out. We're just going to see how it works, right? So a little bit more of a complex pattern, but it's there. The analogy is there, and that's how the mind of a pattern hunter works, right? So we're trying to break down price action. We're saying, if we've seen something before, if we see it again, what does it mean? Right? And does it mean the same thing? Are we going to get the same result? Taking the mystery out of what's going to happen on the right hand side. Okay, guys, that's all in terms of the presentation. It seems to have been quite a lengthy presentation. Actually, we've been going probably best part of an hour, but if you folks have